Taylor Walker from the Adelaide Crows, and you're listening to the Coaches Panel.
Shannon Hurn from the West Coast Eagles.
This is Nathan Jones from the Melbourne Football Club.
Phil Davis from the GWS Giants.
It's Brad Avery from the Port Adelaide Football Club, and you're listening to the Coaches Panel.
Hello, you with MJ. Welcome to another Coaches Panel podcast as we talk through who I believe are the most relevant players for Supercoach, Dream Team and AFL fantasy coaches. The article is already at coachespanel.tv. You can go and check that out. In at number 23 today, Collingwood midfielder Adam Treloar. To talk all things Treloar, I got Jimmy on the line. Hello, mate. How are you?
Hello, MJ. Hello, listeners. Good to be back.
He's a pretty exciting young talent, is Adam Treloar. Still just the 25 years old midfielder, but one of the most consistent 100-plus midfielders in terms of averages that we've seen over the past couple of years. Last year, his best fantasy footy scores came in the same game against Richmond. It was a 147 for AFL Fantasy and Dream Team. Huge ceiling. And a 149 for Supercoach. 108 was his AFL Fantasy average from his 13 games played, and a 109 in Supercoach. He's just a touch under 600,000 in that format of Supercoach. And then really pricey in Fantasy and Dream Team, and that is because he's got a really big average and ceiling about him. 787,000 he's going to set you back in fantasy. Not far off that too in AFL Dream Team. $775,800. We've alluded to the fact, Jimmy, already, his ability to just be such a consistent scoring midfielder. Since 2014, he's averaged over 100 in every single format and has gone over 110 previously in every format as well. He's just one of the most fun and exciting players to actually own as a fantasy coach. And sometimes that goes past us, doesn't it? We always want to get the guy that's got the big ceiling, the big consistency, the durability. We want this statistical beast that is going to deliver us these things. And while that is certainly something you want, something can't be misunderstated, and that is the desire of just and the joy of watching a player play the game that it can bring a fantasy coach, where you watch Adam Treloar burst out of stoppages, run and carry the ball 30, 40 metres and deliver it inside 50 or kick, that game-changing goal from just a pure footballing sense, and the joy he can bring a fantasy coach. There's not many better than Adam Treloar.
No, that's it. He'd look an awful lot better if he'd chosen Richmond all those years ago instead. But no, look, he is still fun to watch. There's no question about that. And I think, honestly, when it comes down to it, the only reason you're not picking him is because you like someone a little bit better. There's no question mark he's going to be in the top handful again, surely. There's no reason not to pick him. People will talk about Beams and what impact that has, but I can't see that making any real difference, to be honest. He's Collingwood have shown us, and so have other teams before too, but especially Collingwood, that they can have 4 or 5 guys averaging over 100 in that midfield. That's they've done that last year. They've done it a number of years over the journey, and there's the way that they play and the style of football and the type of players they have. There's enough going around that he's not going to be averaging less than 100.
No.
There's no real question mark about that. And there's every chance he could be going 110, 115 again.
Yeah, you look at his 2018, yes, an injury-impacted year, just the 13 home and away games, but still 9 tons from his 13 games. Only,
not bad, eh?
Yes, not a bad conversion rate, is it? 3 of those tons were over 130, which is a really strong ceiling. That's captaincy consistency. And when we talk about
captaincy, I just want to mention... He's got 3 of his first 6 games on a Thursday night.
Yeah, which is huge, given Supercoach is the rolling lockout. AFL Fantasy will do, at least in a smaller percentage, give you the vice-captaincy loophole. And at time of recording, AFL Dream Team looks likely to be a full rolling lockout for the year. So these guys with those Thursday night games and Friday night games, which Collingwood, among other teams, have a plethora of them, given the amount of attractive football and high winning games they've had. It's a huge, huge benefit for one simple reason. We don't have perma-captain. Last 2 seasons, Tom Mitchell was just leave the C on him and walk away.
Yep.
We don't have him this year. And I think, well, it's horrible for Tom and for the Hawthorn Football Club. I think it's one of the best things for fantasy coaches because now the variables and possibilities open really, really wide, where it was always everyone had Tom Mitchell. Now, if you've got Adam Treloar as your captain, if you've got someone we revealed a few days ago as Dustin Martin as captain, a Dangerfield or a Grundy or whoever it is, all of a sudden now the variations and permutations that can happen for fantasy footy is huge. So someone like an Adam Treloar, when you start him in your side, he's a captaincy option, and you need multiple of them this year more than ever before.
Yeah, absolutely. And with the numbers he delivers and the opportunity you've got, and especially in a rolling lockout format, and even in fantasy, those Thursday night games are a partial lockout. 3 of the first 6 to be able to have that choice to do that with him, and especially when one of those, is up against Grundy will be up against Stephen Martin. Having Treloar as an opportunity there is very handy.
Yeah, very nice. So that's just, what he delivered in fantasy last year, those 9 tons from 13 games. It was even better in Supercoach, 10 tons, 4 of them over 130, that average of 109. That's great conversion rate. Then you go back to 2017. It was probably considered a down fantasy year for Adam Treloar, which is crazy to say. From 21 games, 14 tons. In AFL fantasy, 6 over 120 and an average of 108. This was considered by some a down year. While for Supercoach, maybe this is where that kind of perception comes from, was 11 Supercoach tons, 4 over 120 and an average of 101. The reason that was considered, quote, the down year was because in 2016 he went at 111 across all formats, had 15 AFL Fantasy and Dream Team tons and 16 Supercoach tons and didn't miss a game all year. So that's where, more from the Supercoach community side of things, it was believed that 2017 was a down year because he dropped, from a 110 midfielder down to just pretty much a flat 100. But for years now, we're seeing this durability, this consistency, and high ceiling, making him one of the best midfielders in the game and one of the best fantasy options.
Yeah, absolutely, and you should be very firmly on the watch list. Well, not even as a watch list. You don't need to see what he does in JRT. We know what he can do, but he should be sitting very firmly front of mind for all coaches as a genuine option to be starting in your midfield this year.
There's no way he's not.
There seems to be no one talking about him. Everyone's all over McRae and Oliver and Kelly and these types, but Treloar and Cornelio, who we spoke about last week, are going completely under the radar.
Yeah, and you do look at some of the teams that he shares his bye with, and I want to talk about his conversion rate and ceiling in just a moment. But you share it with Brisbane, Geelong, West Coast, Sydney, and Melbourne. Clayton Oliver's probably the out and out, big name midfielder through there. Potentially Gaff and Yo. Gaff more of as an upgrade target. Yo certainly is a unique starting squad. But there's not this plethora of options like we get in some of the other bye rounds. Of 2, 3, 4 big premium midfielders that you're having to choose against. So look at that first bye round in round 12. Essendon, you've got a Zach Merritt. Fremantle, you've got a Nat Fyfe. And also the Western Bulldogs, you're rolling around with McRae. So if you're starting there, you can't go too many options rolling through there. You're really going to struggle to get an 18 on field. Whereas the fact that he comes from a bye round where relatively not a heap of big premium midfielders that are popular are in there, I think it only bodes well for Adam Treloar.
Oh, absolutely it does. And I think then the only other thing you might look at is whether you want Treloar, or whether you want Pendles, or whether you want Adams, or whether you want Beams, or
side bottom,
whether you want side bottom, or whether you take a punt on Phillips. They've got a lot of options there that could score over that 100-point mark, and I genuinely believe there's no reason that all of them couldn't do that this year.
No, it's a scary thought. So he's got ceiling, we know that. He is, if you start him, he's considered someone that you could use as a captaincy option, but he's not going to hurt you all that frequently. In just his past 34 games of home and away footy, just the 3 scores are under 80 for AFL Fantasy and Dream Team, and just the 5 for Supercoach. But then you contrast that to the amount of tons. That's 21 games of the past 34 in Supercoach, where he's gone and tonned up, and 23 in AFL Fantasy and Dream Team. And so that conversion rate of hundreds, in contrast to the stinkers, we'll call it, is really, really solid. And so for me, you're right. The only real two big kind of question marks about Adam Treloar, one, and I suppose you could build it into personal preference, but is there someone cheaper that you think will match him that you like more? That's probably one question mark. And then the second is, what is the impact of Dane Beams into that Collingwood midfield, specifically around Adam Treloar? Do you see it impacting Adam?
No, to be honest, not at all. I could see it impacting potentially an Adams or Beams himself, or
Sire.
Handles even might spend a little more time. Sire especially is going to get burnt, I would have thought, on that one. That's bad news for his development, I think. But no, overall, I can't see that impacting on Treloar. His best position is playing midfield and pushing hard forward. And I can't see Beams changing that.
Well, he wins plenty of his own ball. He's got this great burst away from the stoppages. He can also get on the outside and link up. Impacts the scoreboard. I think he kicked like 12 goals last year. Averages just shy of 30 touches a game. Pretty decent disposal efficiency, given what he does with winning in and out, with 68% efficiency last year, 5 inside 50s, 7 score involvements a game. Like he really is one of the most complete midfielders in the game. Yeah, there are moments, where he'll spray the ball by foot coming out of a contest, but he's certainly not alone in doing that. It's actually quite common for in and out ball winners that are trying to get rid of the ball under pressure. Of course that's going to happen, but yeah, I don't think the Beams thing will impact him personally and his midfield time. I also think what we saw late last year, especially through finals, how damaging Steele's side bottom was, and really one of the key reasons that they did so well through the finals. There are many reasons they made the grand final, but Steele's side bottom was the one getting the defensive attention from West Coast in the grand final. It was shutting down on side bottom because his outside work was cutting up teams, and so previously Treloar was getting the tag, whereas I think sides are going to realise what they were able to do that shut down Collingwood at times during the year was the outside impact and the elite skills of shutting down a Steele side bottom.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And if I was running a tagger or two, side bottom and then Phillips, I think would be the two that I'd be looking to completely shut down their run if I could, because winning the inside ball is something Collingwood's always going to be able to do, but that outside stretch is that second and third link is where you can cut them up a bit. So that if you can shut down those two, I'd be doing that more so than trying to stop Treloar, who's almost proven himself untaggable in a lot of ways. Yeah,
which is a big call to say that. He missed a bunch of games last year, absolutely. But outside of last year, he's incredibly durable because he's only missed, again, not counting last year, 6 games in the 5 seasons prior. So he's got consistency of hitting hundreds in terms of an average. He's got a really great ceiling, and he's got durability. And while not all the formats, are open, Dream Team at time of recording is not yet open, so you can't make the big brand call that he's unique. But he's relatively unique in contrast to how the fantasy community talk about him. And I kind of want it to stay that way. I almost wanted to not have him in the 50 most relevant, because there was a part of me that was Jimmy going, if I don't say anything, it'll be fine.
That's it. But being such a big influencer on the fantasy footy community, MJ, I'm sure.
Oh, no. No, trust me, mate.
Everyone's picking him.
Trust me, that certainly isn't happening in what I think. But rather, you kind of, when you find these guys and you see their ownership number, you're like, I don't really want to add to that ownership number, so I'll be quiet. And let's hope that nobody else does their research. Let's just help that nobody does their own work, and maybe he'll stay. No, he's not. Look, he's a star, and if he's not in your starting squad calculations, when it comes to them getting off their bye round, he's probably one of your first upgrade targets. As you enter into round 14, coming off round 13, if you haven't got Treloar and he's fit and firing, he should be right in contention for you.
Oh, absolutely. And the thing I think we're going to see this year a little bit too is that those bye rounds being as late as they are, we're going to have more or less completed teams by that round. I think we're going to be pretty close to it, if not there. So if you're waiting until the bye round to get him and you're upgrading others around him, it's going to be an interesting sort of way to go about it, I think.
Well, there's 12 rounds before his bye. And if he goes at what he did last year, that 108 average in Dream Team and Fantasy, that 109 in Supercoach, that puts him as a top 10 midfielder clearly in Fantasy and Dream Team and knocking the door down in Supercoach doing that. Can you afford to go without that? Maybe you can, maybe you can't. But look, he's going to, certainly with his ceiling, he can hurt you if you don't have him. And given his relatively strong consistency of hitting hundreds and 90-plus scores, I right now, I have him in pretty much all my sides. I think Supercoach, he's in and out a little bit, but for Fantasy and for Dream Team, I got him locked away. Where do you have him, man?
Yeah, no, Dream Team, I've got him sitting firmly there at the moment. Supercoach, he's in and out, as you said. Fantasy, I don't have him. And that's because I think that's the place where you can load up on those value options a little more safely. So he's, but he has to be right in consideration, I think, for all formats, and in drafts as well, for that matter.
Yeah, if someone said to me they were taking Adam Treloar, especially in AFL Fantasy and Dream Team, in the opening round, I wouldn't be like, oh man, what are you doing? You're an idiot. No. I'd be like, I get that because he's durable, he's consistent, he's got a good scoring ceiling. So even in Supercoach, it probably does feel a touch early, potentially, but he's gone by the second round of every draft in every format.
Oh, absolutely he is. And I think being the player is, and because there's not that hype about him this year, I suppose, that there has been previous, he will slide just a little bit more than he probably should, I think, in a lot of drafts. Those first handful of picks are going to be the same 3 or 4 players in every draft. And beyond that, people are going to be looking at, I think, are they taking the next best mid, or are they taking the best defender or the best forward, or jumping early on Gorn maybe. And so Treloar will drift towards that end of first, start of second round, I think, in most drafts. So, but if you're picking him up as your first midfielder and even in the second round with something in the first, you're doing very, very nicely, I think.
I'd be stoked because you're right. Because based on his average point, he's probably a top 10 selection. But because we've got some really big rucks that if you don't get him early, you won't get him.
Yep.
A Patrick Dangerfield, who was probably a first rounder anyway.
Yes.
He's now probably a top 2, if not 3 selection. I would think across all formats, a pretty similar first 3 selections, depending on the variation of it. Is probably Grundy, McRae, and Dangers, probably a pretty vanilla top 3 in most formats. Yep. And then it opens up a little bit. Then you might start looking, a coach may go Gorn in Supercoach. Someone may go a Lloyd or a Laird a little bit early, or, a Cripps or something like that. But it really does start to open up. And if you can, on the run back, if you're a 10-team league, you get your first round selection at 8 and you go and lock yourself in a Lloyd, for example, you could land yourself Adam Treloar on the run-through back, which would be a fantastic start for you.
Absolutely it would. And to be honest, that's what I'd be inclined to do, is ignore him in the first round, I think, and hope that you can get him in the second. Unless you're in the first couple of picks, in which case you're ignoring him in the first and you're no chance in the second. But
because he's not a top 5 pick, is he?
No, I don't think he is,
Okay.
which puts him in that sort of 6 to 15-ish type bracket, give or take a little bit.
Yeah.
He's clearly got potential, and he's a worthy pick as your first mid once those other couple are off the board. And it's just about whether you can get him on that run back on the second. Yeah,
and in a keeper league, he goes very similar in a brand new keeper league. He goes inside those top 10 to 20 selections, no doubt. And in an established one, why would you be trading him? There's just no reason to get rid of a midfielder who's shown he can go 110, who does not average under 100, even when he has some tagged affected games, and he's in his mid-20s. This is when you're a fantasy coach in a keeper league, and you've got a guy in his mid-20s who's just turning up every year and can be 110, you just don't trade that for anything.
No, I tend to agree, but I do think he's gettable.
Ooh. What is he going to cost you?
By a Collingwood fan,
yeah, that's true.
He'd be the sort of player I'd be targeting this preseason on the back of the injuries he's had last year, the inclusion of Beams, all of those things. I'd be just subtly mentioning in the group chats and talking him down a little bit, and then you make an offer for something that's a little younger or scoring a little better but a little older. That type, and throw in a draft pick if you have to. But if you can pick him up, I think now's the sort of time to be going after him.
Yeah, I don't mind that strategy. I don't mind that. I think you're right. If you're going to get him, it's probably right now. Otherwise, kiss it goodbye.
Round one, yeah.
Yeah, and even probably before JLT.
Yeah, yep. No, I'd agree with that.
Make the move now, and if you can get him, you're going to have to still pay a pretty penny for him.
Oh, you will.
But
you
it's
won't
worth
get him
it.
cheaply, but now's the time to get him if you can.
Yeah, I like it, man. Hey, appreciate your thoughts on Adam Treloar.
Easy, mate. Thank you.
If you want to go and check out the article, it is there at coachespanel.tv, along with all the other reviews and analysis on all the players inside the 50 most relevant, getting real close to the top 20. And it's harder and harder to rank these incredible fantasy footballers, but I'm having a crack. Do you agree? Do you disagree? You can have your say across social media. You can join our Patreon and get early access to these podcasts, as well as some exclusive content. And you can check out all the other player podcasts too of the 50 most relevant. If you just discovered the Coaches Panel or the 50 most relevant, head back through iTunes and Spotify, check them out and leave a 5-star rating and review. The second last time we're in the 20s tomorrow, number 22. Okay, I can't count properly. That's not a good sign. Number 22, who is it? You'll find out in 24 hours.